before we look forward, you gotta look back. We start doing that on this week's episode of the Indie Ball Report podcast. We're back. Episode number 364 of the Indie Ball Report podcast. The next one covers one for every day. Ain't that fun? He's confused now. He doesn't know.
I am. I was like, I don't know why. I just didn't process what you just told me.
He doesn't know how many days there are in a year. My God. And we expect him to be able to hit a 60-mile-per-hour pitch at a tryout.
I've been hitting faster than that.
You know Chef's going to dial up that machine now, right?
Maybe. We'll see. I'm going to the cages Sunday.
Chef's going to mix one in there.
I'm doing some lower body drills. We'll see. Because if I can get my lower body to work my upper body a little bit more, I think I might be in business.
I still got to buy a bat.
I might have an extra one for you, so we'll see.
I'm going all in on this here. Which, by the way, if any of the dozens of players that have an equipment company are listening, I am more than happy to take free shit in exchange for promotional work. It will be plastered everywhere. Now, I can't promise you that the Frontier League will not try to blur that. However, I don't believe I have the staff to be able to take the time to blur all of your branding out of all the video they're going to shoot.
Better to blur a tattoo because I'm tatted on my face.
Isn't that
yeah, that is gonna. We're more than halfway there. By the way, we're on 55 days. I think
it's
on the 100-day journey, which means I have 4 videos to post. That was the debacle of my week.
On that note, I'd say we get into the show, but we really don't have that much for you today. But what we do have is a great Atlantic League review because we didn't do it last week. We were supposed to have the South Division this week, do the North last week. We're going to do North and South this week. It kind of worked out because the only real other bit of news that would generate some discussion was the Western Association is supposed to announce their teams, but in classic Western Association fashion, they did not, and then just took down the countdown clock. And any semblance said that they were, in fact, going to announce this thing. So, good job, boys.
Because part of me was, trying to get back for the doubt. Maybe I just forgot that was there and posted from earlier. But no, because I know for a fact that update, that counter had been updated. Because it was coming down to a much earlier date originally, which, of course, they didn't do anything on. And then it was then changed to this past one. So, I don't know. I don't know. I know they've been talking to some people who might potentially be interested in working there, but everybody has the same vibe. We're all like, what is this?
But it is a joke. Really. They don't take themselves seriously, so why should anybody else?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. If they took themselves seriously, then what would have happened is they would have had, first off, we wouldn't be in this boat, period. But more than that, we would have had logos done one at a time, spread out throughout, so that we keep interest up as opposed to releasing them in a batch. That's off the bat. Then, once you had them all announced, you would have had something bigger. So you would have said, all right, instead of waiting 8 weeks or whatever the time frame was, between when you said, we're back, we're actually going to post stuff now, we're going to get the league going, it's going to start in the spring or end of spring, beginning of summer 26, we promise, guys. You would have said, all right, we're going to release 1 a week for the next, or 2 a week for the next month. Maybe you do 1 on Monday, 1 on Friday, or probably want to spread out a little bit more, probably more like 1 on Tuesday, Friday. You've worked it out so that way you have a decent amount of gap there, and then you take the next day to then promote the team you just announced, right? Mm-hmm. 1 day to lay it low and let everything catch up. Then 1 more day to promote the thing, the next team coming out, then announce it, do the same thing over again, promote the team that just came out, let whoever's in charge of that team actually go ahead and say, this is what we are, this is our design, this is what each thing means, some shitty little 4-minute video to try and drum some interest and support in the area and online. And then you just rinse and repeat that over and over and over again. But they didn't do that. They wanted to do a batch announcement, which I could see it working. I could see it now, but you need to have something bigger planned than just like, here's some logos and markets. And they didn't even do that. So maybe there's a logistic issue, but like you're supposed to start in 20. Fine. Didn't. Pandemic, whatever. Cool. Then you put it on the back burner for half a decade. Then we're going to relaunch it. Failed to get off the launch pad, and now here we are. You're going to start in 26, and we have one team that's been sitting in the ether for 6 years in a less than ideal ballpark away from everything else, getting one of your alleged markets sniped by the Pioneer League, which at this point is like getting hit with a one-eyed man with a bow and arrow. And we got nothing really to show for it here. And we're supposed to start playing 3 months? Yeah, okay. Sure thing. First off, if it does happen, which is a big if, before you sign on to manage, coach, or play in this league, you have to understand there's a very high likelihood things are going to be very rocky in the early going. And whatever you do in that league might not lead to the second job. It might just be a thing that you did. Not even like a sense of like, oh, it's, going to ruin your career, but more in the sense of, I think a lot of people are just going to go, what the hell is this? We don't know what to do with it, so we're doing nothing with it. Because frankly, again, they haven't really given you anything to be positive about. And I hate to be overly negative, but like, give me something to be positive about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on them because it's also like, it's not like they wronged me personally. It's just, I just don't think, I'd be very surprised if something became of it. I mean, I had a conversation recently kind of talking about along the lines of if you're talking to them, what is it even that you want to know? And it's, I mean, I think the deal breaker would come down to the one question, which is how long do you expect to, or how long are you okay with not turning a profit? Because if they're like, hey, like we're just going to sink money into this, then, and like, that's just, not even sweating profit. That's one thing. But they've used so many buzzwords about responsible, growth and investment that doesn't seem like they're just planning to like bury money into teams. So they must be expecting to not go all that long without turning profit. And if that's because they can't go that long without turning profit, well, I think then there's a ticking clock on it from the jump. So
you mean to tell me that baseball mastermind Nick DeRosier does not have a plan and have this under control?
I don't know. We have to talk to Ogden about that. I'm sure I know he's reached out to them recently.
Why don't we just ask Brockton?
As the old shout-aheads.
Yeah, Liberty Sports Group did miracles for them.
Ooh. We got Willie Scala injured here.
Brian's currently watching the WBC game between the Czech Republic, as you can probably guess, and Australia. Big hits to the Milkman season going on right now, though.
Yeah, honestly, because he's slid in. So, like, shortstop's coming back. He's coming in from left, and he slides as the backpedaling shortstop catches it. But his hand, his throwing hand, while he slides, ends up bang right down underneath the heel of the backpedaling shortstop. Just perfectly got it. So we'll see. He definitely, they're talking about it now. So we'll see if he comes up again. He's got a few until he has to hit, but they already have one out. So we'll see. Sorry, but honestly, relevant potentially to the season.
Honestly, yeah. He's one of the about 100 indie ball guys that's currently in the WBC, by the way. 16 Frontier League alum, 32 Atlantic League alum, and 44 American Association alum. Don't know if we have any Pioneer League guys in there. They didn't post anything, but I'd be kind of surprised if they did.
Well, no, yeah, I guess it would be surprising if they did, right?
It would have to be for like a Great Britain or someone. I think it would just be like a 1-year pit stop kind of deal.
Yeah, it would be alum, not like active players, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there's any actives in there. I mean, if there,
yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean,
because if you were that good, honestly, anybody with that level of talent and that level of experience to work their way into a national team, like,
I mean, technically, if we want to be like, well, actually, about this, there's probably a bunch of guys on like the U.S. and Dominican teams because they probably played there when they were affiliated still. But as far as actual like indie guys go, I don't recall seeing them post anything about it. I could be wrong about it. I've annoyed Pioneer League defenders enough this week to where I won't poke that bear again. But I said what I said and I stand on it. And go to the website, check out the article. Yeah. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. But technically,
I mean, well, I was going to say, I mean, what were people disagreeing with? I am actually kind of interested.
Okay.
I mean, is that fine for the? I feel
it wasn't anything major. I should say. Actually. Yeah, it wasn't anything major. I should say I'm hamming up a little bit too, but that said, the points of order I had disagreements on were I had one person saying they didn't think they were in that bad of a spot. Once the expansion teams develop and they get rid of the travel team and get someone more stable in there, that they'll be more successful from a revenue perspective. I disagree with that. It doesn't change the logistic issues, and depending on where that market is, it may exacerbate them. Again, their issues are not only with the expansion teams. Ogden does not have player insurance, and I know for a fact, and I won't list them because I don't want to, call teams out at the moment. But I know for a fact there's teams that are still in the league that struggled making payroll last year, and they weren't new teams either. So yeah, I don't think it's just that. It was only like, oh, well, YOLO, Davis, Yuba, whatever they are today, is struggling to make payroll or struggling with whatever, which they weren't on the teams, by the way, at least that I heard of. Then I could go and say, like, okay, yeah, like obviously, or if like Modesto was having issues or Long Beach having issues, like, okay, I can understand growing pains, whatever. But when it's teams that have been here for a minute, and it's like, I don't know about that one, Haas. So that was one point of disagreement here. There was a small thing where there's a disagreement on how I put up a graphic. I said expansion since 21, meaning since they went independent. Some people misread that. And then some people took offense to my critique of Oakland.
We always
trying to minimize the car break-ins and whatnot. True in which my reply to that
quite a sentence.
Yes. True in which my response was I wasn't able to post the whole article on the Instagram post, hence why I then linked in the bio the whole one on the website and said, you should read the whole article. I'm complimentary of Oakland because there's a whole blog that says, despite the early or the rough waters to start, Oakland has been a bright spot for this league, much to my chagrin. I ate crow for a whole bigger because I said, I didn't think it would work, and it is working. So fair play to them for that. Off the hop. 2, I get it's a major city, but we don't hear about players' cars and whatnot being broken into in Gary or Jersey. Not in Jersey, we have house fires occasionally, but that's a bit more of a complicated situation. Also, boys, stop feeding the wildlife. It's not going to end well in any particular circumstances, regardless.
But the raccoons are little hands. They'll steal your little heart.
And they're also chewing your wires. So don't do that.
Okay.
Regardless, we don't hear about it in Gary. We don't hear about it in Patterson. We don't hear about it in any of the other cities, really. So if it's happening, they're hiding it a whole hell of a lot better than Oakland is. They don't have player agents going on Twitter mouthing off about it and then having several players be like, yeah, it happened. So, like, maybe we should minimize it. And let's also not forget that Raimondi was at first firmly in the category of, well, it's close to the highway, which, as we all know, is exactly what you want to hear about your stadium. That for the first couple months was a glorified public park until Oakland pumped a bunch of money into it, which I will give ownership credit for dumping the money into it. They didn't really have to, and arguably would have been better off figuring something else out besides doing that. But they chose to go that route, and it's paid off for them, so good for them. But let's not sit here and pretend like that was normal behavior, because statistically, car break-ins happen in major cities. Yeah, and statistically, they don't happen to the players, and they don't happen around like major event places. So And you would assume the organization would be like, hey guys, don't park there. It's potential for a problem. So
I don't know what it's like now, but I know Lexington had a bunch of them back in the day.
So I'm just saying that it was a problem. We can admit that your team has a problem and that they then overcame it because they cleaned that up.
And we're all very proud of them.
Exactly. They've done a good job. But let's not pretend like it's not an issue.
Right.
Like,
no bueno.
Exactly.
You don't want that. That's not the way to go about it. I mean, because also, I mean, let's remember, I mean, never mind. I'm going to get us off topic. I don't need to do it. I'm going to behave. We're okay. I'm back.
But yeah, so that was the contention I got from some Pioneer League people.
Well, I can see it.
Also, fun fact for you. If you go and compare the Baseball Reference per game attendance, it is notably different than the Pioneer League.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, notably different.
Quite know what to make of that.
I don't know, but I put it on a graph.
Yeah, which I appreciated. I mean, it was worth noting. Which one? I mean, were they? I'm sorry because I saw the graph, but I didn't think to internalize this stuff. Were there certain teams that were more off than others?
I just went off the total league attendance, not the individual team attendance. So I don't know if I can totally answer that. What I found interesting, though, was if you compare the reported yearly attendance, the total number of people that went to the gates, they're nearly identical, Baseball Reference and the Pioneer League one. There's like a slight discrepancy in 22, but we're talking like less than 200 people, so not even really worth mentioning. But then you go to the yearly attendance, and after 21, they're never really that close. They're off by a notable margin of this. And in the last year, we don't even have a data for 25 from Baseball Reference.
Yeah, there were a bunch of teams that didn't have anything reported, I feel like.
Yeah, so they just don't have that.
A lot of different occasions. Yeah. I don't know. We don't have to get in the weeds on that right now, but I was just interested in what people were complaining about and whether I agreed with them, frankly. I do hate that about Nick. You're right. Yeah. I, for the most part, actually agree with you.
Yeah. I think that's surprising.
I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's condemning Oakland because of the car break-in thing. I get it. I mean, hell, I was in Lexington and they had car break-in issues, but it's also, worth it. I think fair to note, and whatever else. I don't think it's too crazy. I think also the idea that the league will be fine once they solve this travel team issue, I think is short-sighted. I mean, it's one thing if the way we talked about Empire State, their second season in the Frontier, when we were like, this can't happen a third year, guys. Like, this has to be wrapped up. It's not that. This is year one. This league was already struggling with the credibility factor before this team. And I get the argument of included in that was also, stability. But I mean, if we're this many years in and at all times, basically there's a team that's so unstable that it's almost throwing things off for the whole league. It's not great. And yeah, they just have a lot to prove still, unfortunately, for a team that's this deep into the experiment. But yeah, I think because a lot of it comes down to, even if, they bring in a new market, they get rid of the travel team, there's a good chance they still have a travel team because another market has an issue based on what we know. So that's the pointing. I feel like saying, once they get that cleaned up, it's fine, isn't fair, because we're not saying they have an issue because they have teams that are struggling and a travel team. We're saying we have an issue. They have an issue because of the things that have caused those things to be in place, the travel team and the struggling organizations. Exactly. And the fact that those issues have not been alleviated.
Exactly. The issue isn't that we have wet carpet. It's the fact that there's a pipe burst underneath it. Right. So changing the carpet isn't fixing the pipe. You're going to have wet carpet again.
Exactly. I'm with you there. So, I mean, I think that's it. And I don't know, that's really hard to articulate in like a short written thing that is like basically a highlight of an article. So I also get that maybe they didn't have all that context, but still.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, I understand that most of the article did not make it all the way through there, but still, I think by and large the points stood there. Now, out of curiosity, I'm going to read you just like the one solution-y kind of part of it, and I want to hear your general thoughts on that.
Okay.
The best outcome I see for the Pioneer League is a freeze on expansion and balkanization, fragmenting in smaller regions of existing members to create a heavier regional focus for members. Ideally, you reduce the schedule to a pair of 36-game halves, played from Memorial Day to mid-August, with each half winner making a divisional playoff round, where they'll play each other before a true playoff tournament among the divisional round winners for a league title that wraps up on Labor. Oh, damn it, I forgot to put Labor Day on there. My mistake there. I really need to proofread these, but, I had to rush it out.
If you ever need an editor, let me know.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's a large part of my job anyway. Might as well do something I actually like during the day.
Read about baseball instead of products?
Yep.
Oh, well, that's good. This keeps the schedule moving, eats summer dates while leaving warm weather dates for other revenue events, and gives clear starting and end points for fans and players. I keep the franchise designation that essentially removes roster restrictions from one player per team and cap experience at 3 years in the league, no older than 26 on opening day, to make it clear to scouts that this is a league for younger, raw talent that will be moving on one way or the other. Finally, I'd add to the league office, through whatever means possible, they need at least 3 more hands on deck to handle league ops, sponsorships, and general oversight, a league structure of a commissioner followed by 2 regional directors and 3 league admins. That's expensive, but needed to properly run a league of this size and scale. Above all, though, they need to add someone from another partner league office to their own league office. The Pioneer League lacks experience in indie ball to properly herd cats they have and make to properly herd the cats they have and make the decisions thrust upon them. You need a voice in the room that has been there and seen it before to guide the ship to port. I also agree calling them the Donner Party of baseball.
Not bad. All out.
Yep.
Hey, if you're going to be journeying out west, you're going to get compared to the Donner Party.
And they may be dying in California too.
Comes with the territory, we know. Yeah, and frankly, it's the California journey that might be part of the problem.
And they're eating themselves too, so.
It's also true.
So, but yes, the conclusion I reached there, you have any particular thoughts on that?
Again, I think I generally agree with you. I think more people within the league office, I mean, even if they want to gradually grow that thing, but it needs to be intentional. And I understand, by the way, there's a lot of, it's really easy to sit here and say they need to have a plan and they need to stick to it, when that stuff goes so easily awry when it's something, when you have struggling organizations or whatever else, where things just come up, like messes just manifest essentially. So I understand, it's easy to sit here and go, well, you got to stick to the plan, when then all of a sudden somebody's like, this team's about to fold if we don't figure out a solution here. And you're like, all right, so, well, first we'll deal with that, then we'll get to the plan, this part of the plan or whatever. Like, I understand how things get messy, but also at a certain point, how much longer can we go here? And I feel we're dangerously close to finding out that answer, actually.
Yeah. I also just think like the regionalization would really help. We got 12 teams in this league right now, and you mean to tell me we can't break this into like 3 separate regions and really focus on that? Because that helps a lot on the expense front, if you want to get down to it. The travel drops down significantly. And in some cases, if you can keep it pretty much like contained to the same state, that might affect the insurance rate and help out a little bit there too. Plus, housing gets a little bit easier to solve as well. Everything kind of gets a little bit easier if you just keep it more regional and almost bring it back to a traditional like MLB structure, right? Where it's more of a heavy focus on American League, National League, and then particularly your division in that league. Like, these are the guys you're playing. And I almost want to describe it as you need to get back to being a train league versus a plane league, where everything is doable within the train trip. Now, granted, they're doing everything with a bus anyway, so I understand, like, technically it's this, but, like, my overall
Well,
point
thanks,
is,
American infrastructure.
yeah. Well,
Could take a bus if you wanted to, or couldn't take a train if you wanted to.
shit. So I get it. But my main point is just the regionalization. I think that's really where they got to head towards, because I think it's going to save them a decent amount of money here, but particularly look in each of the other 3 league offices, find somebody and throw money at them just to get them there. And I obviously don't have much money to throw at them. And that's a lot easier said than done, because you do have to convince someone to go there too. Like, they have the free will to choose, just not. But it's to have the current group that they have now, as I put in that piece. I don't believe it's malicious or anything, like, in a negative way. I just genuinely, and I do think they're genuinely trying their best. I just don't think they know what to do.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they're just at a loss right now. And I think there's a lot of moments where they're just kind of listening to their rich friends, but that's an easier trap to fall in than we probably care to think. But I just pointed that we're not going to give everyone a free pass here. I think there's just a lot of that, but
yeah, I think there's a decent amount of that. Plus, I also wonder, at a certain point, you really become beholden to a handful of owners, and now they get to really start calling shots. And it's like, I don't really want to do that, but I don't really have a choice to not do that. Otherwise,
they might already be in that spot, if I'm honest, right? I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Absolutely. Look at that. We had a conversation we weren't expecting.
You'll figure this out.
I guess having a fun conversation. So we want to talk Atlantic League now, and we'll see how long that goes for, or what happens with that.
Sure. And I'm just, I don't know. I wish I was more prepared, but I always say that.
We'll take it nice and easy here. I mean, a lot of these games are out of date as is. So, we'll see how it goes, and we'll kind of take it from there. Yeah. I guess we'll just pick a team and start working our way through it. Overall summary of the league, we had a York championship over High Point 4 games. 4 playoff teams were York, Lancaster, High Point, Gastonia. So teams you'd expect. And it's an interesting little season that we had going there. You want to start in Charleston, or do you have another starting block that you want to go to?
I'm fine with starting Charleston. Sure. Whatever floats your boat.
All right, let's start there, then, and we'll work our way around. Overall, record wasn't what they wanted. Finished 52-74. I don't think they were that terrible overall, though, to be honest with you. But a lot of it, too, could just be, hey, look how good James Nelson is.
Yeah, well, isn't a lot of things. Look how good James Nelson is. Yeah, I'm trying to think that through slightly. I'm trying to remember at what point they're winning these games. I actually have that schedule. Hold on. Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, I mean, Charleston had, I felt like this never got going, right?
Yeah.
If you look, I mean, they were slow out of the blocks. I felt like they didn't have all their visa guys. And then as they kind of picked up, they went on a good run. What was this stretch here? They went on a 15-10 run. I think that was through May. And they got back there over 500 at that point. And then they sort of strolled around 500 and never really got anywhere. And then it just got ugly as the year went on. And I think it was just a lack of depth. It honestly had a lot of the feel of that Lexington season for PJ when there were no visa. I mean, I was the baseball ops guy to start that year where the visa guys ended up just not coming through, or they did come through, but the paperwork got submitted late. Don't look at me. It wasn't me. And
it was probably you.
It was not me. Come on now. That paperwork was, I commandeered the paperwork and then gave it to be sent. And the question was, did it ever actually get sent?
No, it did not.
I couldn't take it into the end zone for them. So anyway, but it had that feel. And then one of those years where it was just like kind of everything was falling off the rails. And he was just like, the team was just like, well, this kind of is what it is. Not that they weren't trying, but the fact that it was pretty clear where things were going early on, I would say. If I remember right, they had some early injuries. Was it Pistano, I think, was off to a really hot start and he got hurt. And then the guys that they were calling in just weren't like the same caliber. Like Bobby Bradley ends up on the restricted list at one point. It was just, yeah, I feel like a good number of the top players on this team weren't able to hang around. Bobby Bradley played 20 games and wasn't really the guy that they were looking for. He struggled. Ben Blackwell was like a good key part of their lineup, which was kind of a nice surprise, but the pop wasn't really there. Keon Barnum was there for 52 games. Just looking at this, only a few guys were there for very long. James Nelson obviously headlines that. Zach Daniels had a nice year for them, and Alexander Womack, who's very good, by the way. Like, he is a really good find. He briefly showed up for Lincoln in 2024 and ended up falling to PJ, getting that connection done to get that deal. So good for them. But it was just, yeah, it felt like a lot of the best guys they had were not there for the long haul. They couldn't keep them, or they got hurt, or just multiple different things kind of happened there. And it was just not a lot of complete seasons out of guys. And then also they started leaning on some of their best arms out of the bullpen a lot. Like Lance Lusk had a ton of appearances. He started getting tagged occasionally with that. It was just not a sustainable way to build it. It was a team, I would say it's a team that could easily beat the hell out of you any given day, but also the odds were not. On the average, they just were not a high-performing roster. They just weren't built that way.
Yeah, I'm liking also the pitching. I think you're onto it with overuse on guys because the depth also wasn't really there.
Yeah,
on a lot of it. So that's part of the problem. And I'm also looking at some of the other bats in the lineup. Like Woback, you said he was great. Obviously, Nelson was great. Cedillo was good when he was in, but he only played 70 games. And then you start looking through all the other guys, and like there's certain guys that did well. Rosa did well. Daniels did well. But like there is also flaws there. I mean, you look at a guy like Daniels, for example, 23 home runs is great, but 150 Ks to 40 walks is not great.
No, exactly.
So when you're going up there, like, yeah, if he makes contact, this ball is going to move. You don't get nearly 50 extra base hits in a season. One every 3 games, about actually more like one every 2.5 games, by not having that kind of pop. But like when you strike it out 154 times, it's going to be a problem. And like Keon Barnum's also in that extent. Like we know he's good, but he also only played 50 games, 17 home runs in that time. That's great. 17 home runs and 20 ABs or 200 ABs is pretty solid. Was it like 8.5% of the time he's hitting a home run? And he's also coupling that with 77 strikeouts. So it's like it kind of quickly dampens the enthusiasm there. So it does feel like it's just a roster where the potential was never met because of circumstance.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's and I keep bringing up just because I know how PJ works. PJ's roster always looks nasty on paper, but that's if things fall the right way. And if guys stick around, don't get signed, if guys actually make it through the visa process, all that stuff. And sometimes when we've seen what happens, I mean, you can almost look at PJ's career of really high highs or really low lows. You can tell which years it went the way it was designed to, which ways it fell apart. And I think it's began and end with it just wasn't a sustainable roster built this year.
Speaking of PJ seasons, we go to his old team in Lexington up next, 64 and 62. Yeah,
Godman Cecil faces the minimum, baby.
Remember, it's still WBC season, boys. Lexington.
Yes.
2 games above 500. Not a bad hitting team, but shit, they can't pitch.
No. And remember, they had a really weird start to things. Let me just pull their early results real quick. They
were in the hole bad. They lost a bunch early. But did they lose like?
No. They looked good early, and that
there
was some heated debate on what that meant. Because they swept Charleston, but we immediately were like, all right, Charleston doesn't really have their full deck of cards. And then they went to Hagerstown, took 2 out of 3, and we're like, Hagerstown's not that good. Then they lost 2 out of 3 to High Point, and we're like, makes sense. And then they took 2 out of 3 from Charleston, swept Staten Island. And again, we're like, none of this is indicative of what is happening. And that was their entire season.
Yeah, but they would seem right. I'm now remembering this. Yeah, because I was a truther on them because I was like, look how many they're winning in a row. Who cares if they're bad teams?
My issue then, and I did the math, and damn, I can't actually find it. I should check it again. They had a really weird. I think it wasn't weird; it was predictable. So again, it goes back to the idea of what scouting resources you have in indie ball. Lexington built this staff with a lot of guys who didn't have a ton of familiarity within the Atlantic League. So a lot of the time, you're going and facing guys for the first time, and literally that at bat, unless you have somebody who played against them or with them in other leagues, those first at bats are when you're finding out what the guy throws and how hard he throws it. So it's a lot to try to deal with. And I think early on, they were definitely running into, or teams were running into unknown quantities with the Lexington pitching staff. But then you started to see them got their second time around. So, and I think a good example was their first series with High Point, right? They won 6-5. They lost 5-0, and then they lost 3-1. That's not bad at all. Averaging 4 runs per game allowed, right? And then they won 11-3 against High Point. They won 7-6 next time they played them, lost 5-2, and then lost 18-8. And that's where this is game 6. They've seen a lot of these guys now. And that's where we started to see, and then they played 3 more with High Point. They did hold them to 3 runs, but then they gave up 26 runs in the next 2 games. So that was a lot of what was going on with them, in my opinion, was teams were seeing them a second time and absolutely punishing them. I think Long Island had a similar run with them where once they started seeing guys, they beat them up. And I just think it was and sorry to go right back to roster building when it comes to this stuff, but I think a lot of the teams that struggle comes down to some of the roster building, and the teams that go well, that's when you start talking about the standout players a little more. I think Lexington's roster building was actually really creative and impressive for what they had and what they were trying to work their way back from, which was a couple absolutely awful years. And I think they did a really good job. I think they were a little optimistic with Paul Fletcher coming over from the Pioneer League. I think they brought in a few too many Pioneer League guys. Some of them really worked out. Some of them were really not the solution they were hoping for. And I think they found that out throughout the year. I think the positive is, I think with that now, they have a core group who they know can hold up to a Pioneer League or to a Frontier League. Oh my God, Ryan, to an Atlantic League season. Sorry, I'm looking at rosters from 2 different leagues now. They can hold up to an Atlantic League season, or they showed enough that says, hey, I think this guy's going to get it. Like Zane Washington's one. They're bringing him back. He struggled this year, but he showed a lot in the Pioneer League. So I think giving him a second shot makes a lot of sense. All that to say, now they can take what works and start to add pieces to it. And I think that bodes well for Lexington, as long as they can kind of maintain and not backslide. The thing that's working against them is just their division. I mean, all of a sudden, Southern Maryland is good. Gastonia is Gastonia, High Point's High Point. And then who knows what unknown quantity is coming out of Charleston this year. So they could be fighting some demons here, but we'll see. I think it also speaks to Charleston never felt as bad as they were. They didn't feel like they were the second worst team in the league. It was just that, when every other team in your league is pretty hot, you're just in hell. So I think Lexington ran to that a bit too.
I'm trying to think of what team I'm thinking of that lost like incalculable amount straight to start the season. It wouldn't be Gary, would it?
Gastonia.
Gastonia did. Okay.
Gastonia went 0-5 to start the year, if I recall.
I'm thinking someone that was far worse than that.
Okay.
I don't know who. It probably wasn't even from 25. I'm genuinely confused as to who I was thinking of.
Hmm. Lincoln? No.
No, because I'm not thinking of one of the usual suspects, so to speak, meaning a travel
Southern
team.
Maryland was 0-5. Long Island 1-6. Gastonia was 0-5. Trying to think. Oh, we got a face full of turf on a dive in the outfield. That was ill-advised. Man. Anyway.
It doesn't matter.
That's going to bother me.
Yeah,
Okay.
it doesn't matter because we got to stay on topic anyway. But yeah, I do think Lexington's roster construction would work. And frankly, I don't mind them running back the same strategy, especially of the, hey, let's throw a bunch of guys we don't know at yet. I just think if you're going to do it, you need to splurge and supplement with one or two guys on each side of the ball to make sure that you can survive those lean periods here. And if not, for nothing else, just go like, hey, I know you're used to playing this many games in a season. I know what the deal here is, but we play a lot more, and these guys are a lot better. They're a lot more experienced. They're going to be able to pick you up pretty early on. This is what you have to do to adjust to it and that kind of a thing. Now, I don't know who would be the perfect candidate for that. I'm not the one that has to figure it out either, but I do think that is a route that if they're going to keep the, hey, we're going to take a bunch of wild card flyers here that did really good in this one league that wasn't, as high competition, you need to have a couple of guys that, even if they're not going to produce on the field per se, they know how to kind of keep things mixed up and kind of keep outrunning its own tail and bring them and let them explain like, hey, look, you're going to have to keep doing this. You're doing good, but to keep doing good, you have to do this kind of a thing.
Right. And I think it also has to do with the adjustments because I brought up Zane Washington. The reason I did was because he had in 2024 with Great Falls, he had over a 1 OPS, like comfortably above 372 batting average. And then he came to Lexington and I was like, this guy, I don't know if the Atlantic League jump is right for him, but let's see. I think, he should still put up some numbers, and he ended up slashing 261, 339, 368, good for like a 700 OPS. So over 300 point drop in OPS. That's brutal and unexpected, especially out of a guy who's, anchoring your center field spot. But on the other side, they had Andy Atwood, who was with Glacier in 2024, and he had a 788 OPS with Glacier. And with Lexington this year, he had a 791 OPS. And it seemed like he made some adjustments. He was driving the ball a little bit better. And yeah, if I remember right, he just made a lot of good hard contact. It seemed more so than I saw him with Glacier the year before. And I don't know what adjustments he made exactly. I have to go back and look, but it seems like that was an intentional process for him. So that was, it just, some guys it clicks for, some guys it doesn't. I think it also, it depends on the adjustments that you make right off the bat. But yeah, it's just things like that. And again, Zane Washington showed enough where I think it's a good idea to try him again. But it's now, Andy Atwood's a guy, and that's a solid thing. They don't have to, luckily this year, they don't have to fully rebuild the roster like they did last year, like Paul Fletcher somehow had to do.
That, and also last year they got decent results. It's still a plus 500 season.
Right.
So tough to take away from this on top of the players that you know about. So that's that's a huge one too.
And it takes a little while, by the way. At what is this, about a month into that stretch, a little less than a month into that stretch, Atwood was struggling for sure. This last that long, but he had like a 620 OPS, and then after that, he managed to get it back up into the 800s for a long stretch before it settled in just under 800. So he really found his groove sort of as that year went on. So definitely it's an adjustment. And with the number of Pioneer League guys that were on this roster, I think it's a good sign. I'm just looking. It looks like 15, about 20 games into his season, he had his first home run, and they wanted to hit 70 or 17. So that's like, skipping the first month of the season, still hitting 17 home runs. So it's a good sign. Not to obsess over Andy Atwood. He's not the beginning and end of this lineup by any means, but I was impressed by how he did. So I just want to shout him out while I could as an example of somebody who made the adjustment well.
All right. We ready to go to Southern Maryland?
Yeah, why not?
All right. Well, let's do Southern Maryland next year. Another team where I think a little bit better than expected. 10 games above 500, 68 and 58. Unusual for them. They weren't, at least from my looking, a team that I thought was overly dominant pitching wise. Batting still was typical Southern Maryland, but a lot of that is a product of where they're at. So there's only so much you could do out of that front. But they were starting to generate a little bit of power. That's good for them. But the pitching, like I said, I'm not having Daryl Thompson on this team, and I understand Daryl was backsliding a bit. It's still so weird to me.
Yeah, and it felt like they didn't end well necessarily, so that sucked. Every time there were so many games where it was like, this is where he would have been Daryling, talking about games where you just need a guy to make a 6-inning start no matter what, and you got a guy laboring in the third. You're like, damn. And we talk a lot. I mean, they had good staffs consistently, Brasinho, Latos, and Daryl when he was on it. But also, I mean, they had a lot of guys who would show up and they were just kind of randoms and they would end up being nasty. It was always like a joke. It was like, the bullpen was Latos or Brasinho, and then it was a couple guys we hadn't heard of until that year, and then they'd be the nastiest 4-inning bullpen you've seen since the last 4-inning bullpen they put together. So it does feel like that's missing. We'll see what that looks like with the new regime there this year, but it is odd to see Southern Maryland, show some life, but what was holding them back seemed to be a lot of the time the pitching, which just feels so foreign to what we know of them in years past.
Yeah, I mean, even guys in the past that found some success, like Scrub, didn't necessarily jump off here. I mean, Brasinho was good, but he didn't pitch that much. I mean,
right, exactly.
Innings, so, there's that there. And frankly, there wasn't that much consistency in the rotation either. I mean, Semple was there, and he pitched really good. Although I think it was towards the back half of the season, he started to slide off a little bit. And Thurman pitched a good amount for him. But outside of that, I mean, they really didn't have a defined 3 or a defined 4. Kealoha pitched 12 starts there. They kind of converted Miller to be a starter here. Overton came in here. Connor Overton. No, it is Connor Overton. I totally forgot he was here. I remember I tuned out in this league for a while, so that's one of those guys that fell in the blind spot, I guess. Campbell kind of came in and got converted to being a starter again. Martin was there, but then he was gone. So, and it wasn't like he did that much when he was here. So it felt like that was really noticed. And this is just not the kind of team that can rely on the batting to pick them up. There's some guys that managed to make it happen. Baylor being probably the best hitter in this team, even with the strikeout issues. But, again, strikeouts are going to bite you. To avoid kind of repeating myself here, it's just, there's a lot of mid-level pop guys I'd go. There's not too many guys that are going to be that upper level of hitting consistently in the 20s and 30s home run wise. But there's a lot of guys that are going to be in the teens, like mid-teens here, where it's like, okay, they're enough of a threat to where if you make a mistake, they'll send it. But you can get away with enough stuff to where you don't got to worry about it. And again, I do wonder how much of this is like, hey, they'd be better if they didn't play in the ballpark to play in. But hey.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much was that. There was also a couple dynamics there of, I mean, you're right. I mean, there was a lot of movement within the pitching staff itself. They had 7 different pitchers make 10 or more starts. And I mean, that's not a death sentence by any means. I think the problem comes from the fact that 21 of those starts were made by guys with an ERA over 7, and 32 starts total were made with guys with a 5.45 ERA or above. So, yeah, that just adds up. Not having a consistent 4.5 throughout the season, and that just eats away. Yeah, and again, I talk about where Daryl Thompson would have been key. It's just having that hole there where you don't have somebody who can at least challenge that game or two within the rotation. you just feel that a lot. You start to drop games randomly. And again, if your timing isn't right, yeah, you end up, and I think Southern Maryland ended up in a couple of these ruts throughout the year where it felt like, they might lose a couple games 3-2, 4-1, and then the offense explodes and they lose 9-7. And you're like, damn, it just, if you're going to have guys who might have some outings that are difficult, it just finds a way to get you on the day where your offense shows up and still isn't enough. So yeah, it just spirals on you. I think, I don't know. I don't want to say, I'm trying to choose my words carefully on this one. Stan seemed ready to leave Southern Maryland. And I don't know if I don't want to say anything about anybody's effort. I just, whenever that happens, I just wonder how many times like every string was being pulled throughout the year to fill spots or whatever. And not just because it's like, oh, do I really care? A lot of times it's how many guys do I want to bring into a situation where they might be retained by this team, but I'm leaving. So you feel weird bringing in a ton of guys. So that could also be, I'm not trying to say like, oh, Stan just quit on the team or whatever. I don't even know if he changed his approach at all, but I'm saying a lot of the times, if you suspect he might be going somewhere, it just changes the way you operate with, other adults and bringing them into a situation that you might be planning to leave. So that's just what I mean by that before anybody gets me on that. Cause I don't think Stan was like, screw it, I don't care. Cause obviously this was the best Southern Maryland team we've seen in a few years. So there's that. Yeah. I would just kind of go back to that. I mean, the lineup itself was fine. It actually had a little, in my mind, it was a little better than a lot of lineups we've seen from Southern Maryland in recent years. I mean, Shamari Baylor is great. Brett Pereira was really good throughout the year too. So I think they have some real stuff to build off of. And I think both of them are coming back. I know at least Baylor's coming back this year. So something to watch for.
Yeah. Going to a team with a similar record, meaning the same record, Gastonia. Thoughts there?
Kind of funny to think about that, Gastonia and Southern Maryland having the same record.
Really, because the perception of them too is very different.
Mm-hmm. I think also because Southern Maryland they were going two different directions. So also our most recent memory of them is pretty opposed. I mean, let me see I'll look at this real quick. The highest percentage Gastonia had was on the last day of the season. So literally they finished up at the right spot. And I think Southern Maryland, I don't actually have that one calculated in front of me, but I think Southern Maryland's was pretty early on in their run that they had their best record going. So anyway, Gastonia though, definitely they had, if I remember it, they had a lot of guys with contract purchases. Boy, does that feel like it was years ago at this point.
Mm.
All right, we're back. God, they made a lot of roster moves, huh? Boy.
Sure did.
Wow. Yeah, so they had, Nick Snyder, Brian O'Grady, Narciso Crook, Justice Sheffield, Patrick Mazeka, Richie Martin. So they were all gone. That's a lot of production.
Yeah,
so they were kind of holes throughout the first half, and then in the second half, you kind of see they kicked it in a little bit more. What was their divide, real quick, on the records? First half for Gastonia was 28-35. Second half for Gastonia was 40-23. So yep, they locked and loaded for the second half there for sure.
Yeah. I'm trying to really come away with it. I kind of feel almost similar about it, where it just, you mentioned contract purchases, and it's very clear, like, the depth was a problem. Finish the high note, obviously. But, like, it doesn't feel like they had too many guys that you could count on, bullpen-wise and arm-wise. It also feels like it doesn't just feel like it. You could just tell the way they had to do the starting pitching, where you got guys that appeared in 32 games, 8 starts, 25 games, 7 starts.
They're searching for some answers or filling in.
Exactly. And it's like, all right, cool. And then you're using Craig Stem for some starts here. You're going to other guys as well. And you got someone making 22 starts with an ERA over 6. That's not really what you're looking for. And yet that's what you got to kind of do. It feels like a lot of just like moving guys around because it has to be that way.
Mm-hmm. So for some context, they didn't make it to above 400 winning percentage until their 52nd game of the year. They started the season 9-20. After that point, though, they went 59 wins and 38 losses. So just so for some context, that averages over that winning percentage is a 77 win season over the course of a normal Atlantic League year. So that would be the best record if they played at that pace for the first 29 games also. So you can see how much they kind of got caught on the back foot to start the year and had to sort of start up. And if I recall, their schedule absolutely did no favors for them too. Let me say, if I remember that correctly, if I remember, this schedule was not helping them out. Because I remember I was there at their opening weekend, and they opened with Gastonia opened with the dumbest start ever, which was a 5-4 extra inning loss, a 10-9 extra inning loss. This is all against York, and then they basically burned through that staff and then lost 11-3 the third day. And then burning through that staff, they had to play a double header on Monday against High Point right after that, and lost both ends of that double header. And then boom, just like that, they're 0-5. Welcome to the season. And then they ended up winning against High Point, and then they got it going. But yeah, so they were not at full strength there to start, got caught from going behind there. And then they had to play Lancaster, which they actually made some good headway on, and then 6 against High Point, 3 against Long Island, and then more games against High Point, and then that hot Southern Maryland start against them too. So it was brutal to start the year, and then they got it going. So it all makes sense. I mean, they brought in the pieces they had to bring in as the season went on to kind of fill these gaps. Oh my gosh, I forgot Shedlong Jr. came in for like 11 games there. But also it's just keeping their mainstay guys. Like that's something too. Like guys seem to be coming back to play with them and like playing there. And that's something that they're benefiting from, especially for an organization that after that first season and second season, people seem a little uncertain about. I'm just thinking about guys who stood out here and some of the additions throughout the year.
I mean, Justin Wiley again always does well. Scantlin again did well coming over from Staten Island. Guthrie was also another guy that we had some like could be good, could be bad type of thing in the preseason, and then he really showed up and really performed. I'm trying to think here. Cisco Crook kept up his pace. You know, the adjustment going from Atlantic or American to Atlantic, he seemed to make that pretty well too. Rodier, also not bad. Good power numbers.
Connor Gray is interesting. I should see, is he back this year or not, or if they've said anything about him. Because Connor Gray, he hadn't pitched since 2022. I think he was a Tommy John guy. I don't remember now off the top of my head, so I won't necessarily say that with confidence. But yeah, I mean, he was one who he was in AAA in the Mets system. And then I feel like, I mean, he was with the Chicago Dogs for a stint and looked good. He's been around, but after not pitching 2023, 2024, he came in, made 17 starts, but like didn't have much length. And there was a lot of games I just remember he was pitching fine, but didn't make it out of like the 5th inning. And it was just, you know, it's good, but I'm interested to see if he comes back and if he has more length on his arm this year, because that would be really nice to bring back. But we're not previewing, we're reviewing. I'm trying to show some sort of self-control here.
Keeping it going because we got to keep the pace up.
Right.
We go to the last team in what was the South in High Point, and they're probably one of the better overall teams. They didn't really struggle all too much with acquisitions or contract purchases, anything of that nature. They were pretty good. They escaped on a lot of it, to be honest with you. And they just looked like a very solid team. Bennett Klinsky, again, just goes to work, does what he got to do. Mendoza was nice. A slew of other guys there also showed up and performed. Pitching-wise, probably one of the better pitching teams. I mean, they had guys, too, that did what they had to do. Jameson McGrain's also did that. He just is a tank, man. Like, he's been doing this for how many years now, and he just doesn't really seem to slow down.
Yeah, I'll say, I was saying I've been toying with a new ranking system for indie ball teams, and kind of the way I've been checking to make sure things sort of the quick eye test look good is High Point at or around the top of this. And when they are, I'm like, okay, things probably are going the right direction here with how we're doing this math. They are consistently so good, and it is just the continued, challenge of how are the wheels going to fall off this time. They ran to the buzzsaw of York. That makes sense. But it is, it's a very, 4 guys who played more than 100 games, including Aklinski. Boy, has he become on indie ball legend pace at this point. It was just, they lost some guys too throughout the season, and they managed to replace them. Because I was like, oh, they didn't have as many people that fell off the roster as Gastonia did, but still, they had a few. Also, Matt Solter get signed, Tommy Doyle, Jacob Edwards. So they had some guys, but to the point. Actually made it through to the championship this year. That was big. I don't really know if they would need to change anything. This is such a solid team. I'm trying to look. It's just not a lot of weak spots. Trying to think what stood out to me in games where they struggled. Not a ton. The bullpen had some really good pieces there. I don't know. I'm trying to say anything other than, yeah, they're really good. And this felt like a culmination of a multi-year build that they did. Not that they had to strip down. They were good the whole time, but it does feel like, it's almost one of the, like I was saying earlier, you test out some pieces, you keep the ones that work, you drop the ones that don't. And it feels like High Point has sort of streamlined that. I guess their connection to the ball jobs does make some sense with that, but, yeah, man. Getting a guy like Jameson McGrain come out of the pen almost 40 times, tossing consistently well is huge. I think if there was a main thing, I guess I'd have to lean on. Wareski, Del Bonta.
That's the thing I kind of took away is they lost a lot of starters there. You lost 3 guys to give you 28 starts combined, and then they found other guys that they kind of picked that up.
That's the crazy thing. And I'm looking at that, is that feasible to do again? That's my only concern. Did they get lucky? I'm sure they did to it. Yeah, I'm sure they got lucky to an extent. I'm sure another bit of it is, legitimately just good talent, having guys on the back burner that you're aware of. But yeah, they had a lot of guys come in that was just still chucking it. That's pretty crazy. I didn't really register with me while I was watching games in and out last year. I think it was when you're in it day to day, you're just like, yep, another guy on the bump. Let's do this thing. But when you look at it and you're like, man, these guys are just getting pulled off of free agency and delivering. It's kind of crazy.
Mm. All right. But yes, High Point, impressive season for them. Less impressive, our last place team in the North and worst team overall in Hagerstown. Less said the better. It's it's a real rough situation there. Maybe with some new leadership, things turn around, but ugly season. I don't really know what positives you could kind of take away from this, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. The positives are mostly off the field with them at this point.
Yeah.
And they have at least, I think, making the move to move on from Mace was the right decision. I've heard, I think we both heard talk that maybe not everyone was thrilled with exactly how that went down. But in the end, I think it was the right move. Because, year one is always difficult. And then you start looking at year 2 and it's going, worse somehow than year 1. And you just start to go, okay, what are we going to do here with the rest of the season? And I think the right move was made to, move on, start lining up what you want to do for next year and figure out kind of what you got on your roster and who you can bring in who might be a fit for the future. And I mean, and it's not that there's nothing. I mean, Gary Mattis was really good. Tactics was good when he came in. Wellington Dotel actually showed up and played really well. Just with that, I think it's probably all up from here. They brought in Mark, who, Minikazi, who has done the rebuild multiple times. He was with the early Charleston, the West Virginia Power at the time, teams who had to start in indie ball for the first time, then went to the Genomes, which had to be built from the bottom up, and then Staten Island, which was a rebuild. And with that, he's gotten impressive. He went to the playoffs with West Virginia, then turned Charleston. He almost went to the playoffs with the Genomes. People forget that. And has made, he had a close call, I think 2 seasons ago with Staten Island, almost making a second half run for a playoff spot. And they have definitely shown improvement. This is the most competitive Staten Island has been in their time, with 3 managers over first 4 seasons. Definitely Mark had them at that point. So you look at it and you think, okay, maybe there is something here moving forward where Hagerstown has a guy who knows how to build something in indie ball and and they seem to be a well-run organization. So that seems to be the environment. If he could do it in some poorly run ones, Charleston, the Genome, Staten Island, I figure he'll probably make it happen in Hagerstown. So that's the positive I'll give you. The positive thing in the review is the preview.
Well, speaking of Staten Island, they're up next here. Another team that, Mark was starting to do something and they just never could finish it. Right?
Yeah, that's basically it.
It annoys me because Staten Island should be better than that.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not able to piece it together.
Well, it's also, there's just a lot of shenanigans around this organization. I think we've talked about it before. It's just a lot of, there's 6 weeks left in the season. We no longer have housing with the local college where that's wrapping up or whatever the hell. So we'd really prefer you sign local guys rather than just, best player available on the market. So when you're dealing with stuff like that, you start to go, maybe this isn't the best setup, and maybe there's some deeper issues here. Now, we've talked about the recent changes in Staten Island. Who knows what that's going to look like moving forward, but I understand how we hit the point that we have hit with them over these past few years.
I just want to see them continue to trend upwards, right? Because, they have players. Well, they did. I don't know how many are going to stick around, but strictly keeping as far as last year goes, the pitching was an issue. Fair to say. I mean, they had some guys. McSweeney was solid when he was there, but then after he left, it kind of, disappeared there. Having Nate Rowe out here for 33 innings is a decision at this point. There's just, again, I don't want to keep repeating the same thing about, the depth to depth, but there isn't even a frontline guys here. That end of the year here. Baker was good in the bullpen. And then after that, it's who's your number 1 starter? Peralta? Because he can't be. He had 5 starts in 17 innings. 3 innings to start is not number 1 starter. So you go to Allegretti and find 2 or define 3, 2 on some teams, and then on this team a 1. That's not encouraging. And then what else are we running out here? Guys to get slaughtered?
I mean, yes. In short, yes. And I think that's really what it is. And I think Staten Island, that was the thing with them, is they could compete with you for a lot of a game or even a lot of a series, but it was just that eventually they would just run out of bullets and typically before whoever they were playing. And I think that's what would get them. I mean, you got to go before you find a starting pitcher who wrapped up the season with them. I mean, I guess Peralta with his 5 starts, but realistically it's Allegretti, who was a 4.7 ERA guy. I mean, I just think, there was just a lack of depth. Options. And by the end of the year, it was honestly a lack of everything. It wasn't just depth, if that's honest. And I think a lot of those, you lose guys, like I was saying, and you just weren't able to they were not empowered to backfill and backstop those missing guys with the level of talent that other teams were able to. So while the talent gap might have been there, but might have been pretty small as it started, those margins kept getting wider and wider as the year went on, and they just sort of spiraled, I think, as the year went on. I will say they lost 2 out of 3 to Hagerstown at the end of the season, if we're real about it.
I mean, if we're being the positive is the bats were good though.
Yeah,
that was
the
good.
lineup figured things out.
And we're all forgetting the fact that like Pablo Sandoval was on this team.
I know,
because he just didn't really.
I flipped back and forth. I know that had a different energy this year, didn't it?
I'm sure it did, but
yeah.
I imagine we're done with that now. But I would hope at least.
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so, buddy.
In this and move along. But then again, Baseball United. Is there a connection? Maybe. Who knows?
You put together the pieces. Yeah. Where's my conspiracy night?
No.
It's going to be amazing.
Anywho, Lancaster, you're up next. We have 3 teams left, and I want to get through them before 1 o'clock in the morning. So, Lancaster, for a team that made the postseason, they felt kind of mid. Like, looking back on them, they looked kind of mid. They didn't feel that way during the season, but I look back, I'm like, Nick Ward's cool. Lucky's cool. I started to run out of stuff real quick offensively and pitching wise. I don't recall there really being too many guys. I was like, yeah, he's a knockout. Like, just some bullpen pieces, don't get me wrong, but like starter wise, like Skuro, Kilgore, Green's more a swingman, but I guess we'll call him a starter for this. Like, there's no horrifically bad piece, but there's also no guy where I'm like, yeah, he's your lockdown.
Yeah. So, first of all, I do think Pablo Sandoval, I think there was a pinned post for Staten Island. And I think it's not pinned anymore. So, interesting. One, I checked out slightly on what Lancaster was doing once they got rid of Slater Shield, who was a dog, and I still believe in him. Next, yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like a typical Lancaster team this year, right? It kind of felt like they were good. And usually, you get a good, like they started around 500, and we're like, okay. And then they did kick it up to like that 40-23 run in the second half, but that felt a lot like, I don't know, York might have taken their foot off the gas. And like, I don't know, they never felt dominant. And I think a lot of that does go back to the lineup, right? I think, Joe Campagna was good, really good, frankly. But I'm trying to see here when he hopped in. I mean, he got in July, so right for that second half push. But a lot, when he wasn't in the lineup, which was more than half the season, like Mason Martin, Nick Ward, and Nick Lucky are all very good. However, all 3 are lefties, so if you got a lefty on the mound, you're in trouble at times. At least it can be uncomfortable putting that lineup together. And then you have a solid gap down to like Joe's. Like, you really have about 100 points of OPS fall off until you get back down to like the next regular hitter that you would see in that lineup a lot of the time. And that's just, tough, because if those 3 aren't actively generating offense for you, you can have a really quiet night at the plate. And then you really need to lean on the pitching staff, which, as you said, doesn't really stand out in this team the way it has in past years. Yeah, I just,
yeah.
I think it requires you being dialed in to win the North Division. In the Atlantic League, you have to be dialed in and pretty exceptional among indie ball teams on both sides. And I just don't think they had that same energy that we've seen from them in past years when they had their, the back-to-back wins. I mean, Scott Engler, by the way, nobody talked enough about how good his season was out of the bullpen. But, and honestly, Reese had a really good year too. But outside, when it comes to the starting rotation, it was sort of Noah Skuro and then whoever else was available, and that just wasn't going to get done.
Long Island, penultimate team. Kind of a rebound for them. They started to get back to where they need to be. Seems like Lou Ford's getting his footing now as a manager as opposed to a player. Surprisingly enough, the offense is the issue. I didn't really see much in the way of stand-up performers there that were there the whole way. I mean, Rivertown, yeah, but South Beer was on and off from my recollection there. And then they had a bunch of guys that gave them like 60, 70 games of production, but not the full bout of the year. So that was kind of an issue there. Likewise, pitching-wise, you take a look, and there is some more guys there. Santos for his time there was great. John Gant for his time there. His 4 starts were very good. Noah Clenny looked solid. Romano looked solid. Really, the bullpen as a whole looked solid. Sandberg came in, pitched well, but again, doesn't really give you too much depth here. Griffin, when he was here, was a fine option, but not, a knockdown one. And then it kind of fell apart from there. So the bullpen did their job. It's the Stars really weren't getting it done, and it felt like they didn't have enough of a complete effort from the lineup themselves to really be able to mount all that much to get it going. Although appreciate Al Albuquerque appearing in one game, getting shelled and piecing out.
My guy.
He knew. He's like, when you know, and I know.
I mean, Long Island, them getting screwed by the playoff system feels dangerous because I already felt like the Jaws music was starting. They've been ever since the weird end, and I was there. I mean, I witnessed the end of the era, man. That series where they got swept in the playoffs by Lancaster. And it was just the most flat I've ever seen a team. And I understand there's been indie ball teams who just want to go home by the time playoffs come around. But man, like Boog Powell's on that team and like he's all energy and that felt flat. Like the vibes were in shambles. And then Lou took over and I was nervous because like Lou was also in that clubhouse. So I don't know what was going on there, right? And that first year they had a really slow start with Lou as the manager. And they sort of started picking up in the second half. And then this year, once again, it felt like, Long Island just missed out on, the division in the first half after York was super hot. And then they just missed out in the second half after Lancaster was super hot. But both halves, they were the second best team in the division. And I think third best in the league, third or fourth best in the league. Like, they were right there the whole time. And it felt like throughout the season, they were picking up pieces. They were finding guys. They were continuing to improve. They were nitpicking. Watching Long Island feels like their front office and Lou sit there during games sometimes and think to themselves, this particular thing is bothering me. Like the fact that I don't have a guy to go to in the bullpen in this situation is bothering me. Or the fact that, we have a weak spot in our lineup here. That's the second time Knights killed us. And it feels like they actively go and then they try to fix that and they don't stop until they do. It feels like they're always just bringing in guys. Again, they're adding pieces, improving. And we've seen that. I say that a lot because they're improving again this offseason. They bring guys in from the American Association. It seems like this year was sort of an announcement of, hey, Long Island is back. And this division got kind of lucky that, due to the timing of things and borderline historically good halves by both York and Lancaster, they got shut out of the playoffs. But it feels like this was the shot across the bow here for the league, that Long Island's back in the party.
Yeah, I mean, it was only a matter of time until that happened, and now they are fully back. More preview talk than anything. I do wonder if not having gone not even 2 months, I already forget Bolton's name. If they don't have Frank Bolton leading the charge anymore, I do wonder how much that changes things, but that's preview talk, not talk for now. But last team we got here, say the best for last, York Revolution. Good year for them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my only thing I was going to say was they did have a couple guys that they picked up and had at one point in the year who looked really good on the pitching side, who they lost due to like getting signed or whatever. And then it felt like they had trouble replacing them. That's where they need to improve moving forward. Anyway, York. Yeah. I mean, what is there to say? I mean, it felt like they fully took their foot off the gas in the second half and they still had a 38-5 and 28 record in the second half. So, yeah, a little terrifying. Still had 150 run differential.
Let's also not forget that they just decide like midway through the year, like, let's go get Mike Kickham.
Yeah, that happened. That did happen indeed.
And then Kickham just came out. I was like, yeah, I could do this. And then just start throwing.
Yeah, man. He was, a sub-4 ERA, and then in the playoffs, another sub-4 ERA. But dang, man. That was good at. But again, it shows something when you have that pull where you can go just make that happen.
Plus 5 by going for kick. I'm talking about going from the poorhouse to penthouse.
But I mean, they did the thing. I mean, we've talked about this. I think a big key within indie ball and the teams that I have slowly learned, and I'll occasionally pick against them because I am a slow learner at best, is if you can shorten a game, you have a shot. If you have some pop in the lineup and you can make it a 6-inning ball game, you have a chance. And we were talking about that earlier with Southern Maryland, those really good Southern Maryland teams where that's 7, 8, 9, the game was over. We've seen it a few other places, but the Robinson to Burnett to Mikolajczyk to Salucci that they had going at the end of this season, all 4 of them under 2 ERAs. I mean, Cam Robinson had a .61 ERA in 44 innings of work this year, 42 appearances. Like, okay, fun 9th inning, friends. That's good. And Salucci also was out there. He had 9 saves himself. I forgot that he got 9th inning work too. And he did 32 Ks in 18 and the third. So, that works. It was, and they basically had it where they had a lefty closer and a righty closer at the end of the season for high leverage. So they just showed up so ready for a postseason run. And when you have a team like that, I mean, anytime you beat York, it felt like it was you survived an ordeal. And that's I don't see that necessarily changing. I don't know if they're re-upping the same way moving forward. Again, it's not a preview, it's a review. But man, it felt like they won the first year. They won that first title, and they were like, they didn't let off at all. They picked up the pace. This is so fun coming up.
They did feel like they kind of stood above everything else and just were like the undisputed best team, to be quite honest.
I mean, the other thing too, by the way, they had a revolving door on offense. Their lineup, I mean, Otosaka was only there for 9 games. They had Marty Costas. He played about half the season. He got picked up with a 340 average. Frankie Tostado, he got picked up after crushing. And so basically, you got to go down to, that's right. Shane Fontana was there, but he played half the season exactly. He appeared in 63 games, but he played well. But you got to go down to Jalen Miller before you find a guy, and not down like he was bad, but if you're looking just sort of like batting average, he's their 7th guy before you get a guy who's played 100 games. It was him. It was Higgins played a lot of games, and I think Higgins kind of played a little bit of. He was almost a utility guy for a little while there, if I remember correctly. I mean, this lineup and the positioning on them felt a little bit pieced together a lot of the time, but it seemed like they kind of found it. And in the end, what I think a lot of the time I kind of internalized as a weakness for them was just really good positional flexibility. As I said, I think Higgins was like third base and outfield a lot of the time, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be completely misremembering that, but feel like I saw him a lot while I was at games in York. Though, to be honest, their left field's so shallow, I could have just thought he was in left field, but he was playing third. It was just a really well-constructed roster. They were not without their struggles. As I said, a lot of guys had to get ABs and move around the diamond, but they handled it, and they just were ready when the time came to absolutely massacre. I was right. He played a lot of left field. Actually, his number 1 position last year. They said, Ryan Higgins, meet Big Wall. And he did.
As we approach 1 in the morning, I think that's a great place to leave off the review. In the future, we'll be just trying to get through 1 division at a clip, so it'll be a little bit more in-depth than that, and we'll probably not start them stupidly late, so that way be a little bit more energy on my part going forward on that. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Only the other thing I wanted to make note of before we go to the plugs and get out of here. John Vargas, he died in Venezuela, 29 years old, who had 1, 2, 3, 4 indie ball seasons in there, was with Winnipeg in 22, split 23 with Tri-City and York, went back to Tri-City in 24, and then this past year he was in Lincoln. Don't believe they really said what was the cause there, but either way, very unfortunate news to receive.
Yeah, man, that is one of those ones where you see all of the teams that post it and the number of, not just, oh, we're so sorry for this other team's loss, but so many people who actively interacted with him, and you realize how much ground he covered within the game. It's yeah, man, that's heartbreaking.
It's a tough one, tough situation. That's where we're gonna leave it, though. Always a fun note to end on.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I guess if you have anything to plug for now, we could do that and then get out of here, because I'm very much looking to go to bed.
I mean, I'll eventually get more videos posted about the my pursuits of the Frontier League tryout coming up. I will say I do think people will be grateful that I didn't post a 30-minute long slog through my experience wrestling with the snow. I edited, and I've come up with some shorter videos, so I'll get them out and we'll go from there. And if anybody wants to help me with some hitting advice, let me know, because I'm still struggling with that and I don't want to embarrass myself. And I'm working, it's almost projections and preview season, buddy. We're almost there, so keep an eye out for that. The website is going to be kicked off. My new website is going to be kicked off in time for previews, which I'm pretty excited about. I've kind of made with that, I think I might be overly sculpting the website for previews, and I'm probably going to regret it when I realize, well, that's okay. Preview's done now. What about the rest of the season? I wish this website was set up differently, but that's a future Ryan problem. Idiot. Future Ryan hates past Ryan, but past Ryan and present Ryan hate future Ryan. So it's a good old Tom and Jerry situation in my head constantly.
Sounds like
now I'm accepting recommendations for therapists.
So I started posting again on Instagram. We're back on that now, so that's going to be fun.
Daddy.
Starting to get some stuff going here. We had the Pioneer League thing that we talked about in the start of this. Had a promotional thing and some of the Pioneer League guys too. Did a player guest the other day. I guess by the time this goes up, it'll be the off-season update. I don't know which team I have posted for that. I think I have Winnipeg up first. See, Winnipeg or Ottawa. I know those are the two I have prepped. So those are some things to watch for there. Upcoming release looks like contract data for tomorrow, meaning Sunday. So the first part of that's going to be up. A transaction review, still deciding which one to do on Monday. Tuesday is going to be kind of like the player guests. It's only going to be for teams, though, so you can get team guests. Get another offseason update. So if you didn't get Winnipeg on Friday, you'll get it on, I guess it'd be Wednesday, that'd be the 11th, whatever. It'd be on the 11th, you get another offseason update. Another 2025 stars video. So, or not video. Christ, we're really running out of gas here. So like the Pioneer League stars, you're going to get another stars one. I think Frontier's up next, but don't know for certain. Then we have a Canadian expansion thing at the end of the week too, so that could be kind of fun as well. And then we'll get into some March Madness fun after that. But that's in the future, so keep an eye on the Instagram. I'm posting more there, and the bigger topics are going to get a video too. And then if it's a long piece, like I mentioned, the Canadian expansion one, that'll be on the website too. That's IndieBallReport.com. It's Indie Ball Report everywhere except for Twitter. It's Indie Ball Pod. So that's what you got to look forward to.
You're motivating me to post more.
I'm happy I'm doing something.
Thanks, one of us.
Alright. So that leaves us off there. Probably going to hit American Association next week will be my guess. Until then, don't forget to play ball.